This is Matt for Boxing Social in association with William Hill and Empire Fight Start. I'm delighted to be joined by CEO of BOXRAW, Ben Amanna. Ben, look, I appreciate you giving us some of your time. I know how busy you guys are over there, and it's a bit of a different insight today on the world of boxing. I'm going to talk about your journey. First off, how are we? All good?
Mate, I'm doing well. It's been a hectic week so far. I'm going to Taiwan, China, Singapore in about 2 weeks. I'll be off for 3 weeks, so it's just all hands on deck trying to prep myself for just like 3 weeks of madness.
How excited are you to have a bit of a break and to sort of release that pressure cap, so you can go off abroad and have a bit of a chill?
Oh, mate, it's no chill. I'm there on business, mate. It's gonna be, mate. It's gonna be 20-hour days over 7 days, each week. For 3 weeks. So it's not the chill. I'm not here for the chill, man.
Right. Well, let's talk about where it all started for you, because you as a company and me as a boxing fan, I've seen your company from many years ago and it's slowly sort of growing to what it is now. And to speak to the man who's sort of behind it all, I want to go back to day one. Where did you sort of think of this idea? What inspired you to create this, to make BOXRAW?
Yes, I think there's a few things that initial reaction, which sort of led me to starting to build BOXRAW was, I think I was 24 years old. I was training for a fight, and I was running, as all boxers do as part of a camp, and I remember just running down the street on a main road with loads of cars driving past and wanting people to know that I was training for a fight. Right, I was proud to be a boxer, but I knew that, by what I was wearing, no one would have any idea. I was wearing the shitty Adidas tracksuit. And, I remember on that run just thinking that, there was no real brands that represented boxing how I knew it to be. The brands that sort of delved into boxing apparel or equipment, they just focused on, very much the equipment. The end result of boxing was the boots, gloves, shorts, but none of them really, to me, spoke to boxers. None of them really understood the lifestyle. It was very much just a business for them. They weren't really trying to entice the community or sort of bring the community together by way of a lifestyle brand. So that was that initial reaction. But I mean, boxing generally, it had always been this sort of recurring theme in my life through business. As a young kid, I got into boxing at the age of 12. I started to work at the gym by the age of 15. Competed pretty much all of my life. It was just, I'm fortunate now where I'm able to merge two passions, be it boxing and business, into a fully fledged business now. So
that brings me on to my next question. I saw a recent post, it might have been a few weeks ago, and when I was obviously doing my due diligence and my homework a little bit about you, and I saw a picture of a bedroom, small bedroom, whiteboard, list of goals. One of them was Creed. How confident were you when you were setting that sort of vision board up, that you'd be able to take that brand from there to there? Because you've sort of manifested that, wrote it out, and through hard work and persistence, you've managed to achieve it, especially more recently with the Creed stuff. But how confident were you of achieving all that?
Always super confident, right? I think boxing teaches you that. Like, if you're a boxer, then you don't go into a fight with some doubt that you might lose. That you have to go in there thinking you're already going to win. Knowing you're going to win. And that was the same mindset back then. And people call me delusional, and maybe I was a little bit naive. I'm definitely not as naive these days when I'm planning goals. I've had to learn the hard way through, being over optimistic about, certain objectives and goals. But back then, it was, I think, because I was young and I didn't know a lot about the industry. I just saw everything as actually it can be done. I think that was always like a firm thing that stood with me as a kid growing up, in that, I always looked at, objects and things around me and thought actually they were created by, men and women no greater than, you or I. And I thought, actually, if I just put hard work into this, then I can get it done. So there was never any doubt. And I don't mean that to sound cocky. It's just, that was always the mindset, for all the goals that we have achieved, like Creed, there's a dozen more that I can tell you where we haven't achieved them, but the mindset's always remained the same, and it always will remain the same.
In terms of boxing itself, we see it a lot in terms of getting fights getting made, but people have hurdles they have to overcome, and I'm sure you've had many. What were the sort of hurdles and difficulties that you encountered as somebody who's trying to, let's say, gatecraft? But like you said, there's not been a brand for many years, from like back in the day when you look at Muhammad Ali and Everlast and things like that. There's not been a brand that's really sort of doing what I would say, doing what you're doing like right now. What were the hurdles that you sort of had to overcome, if there is any that you can share with us?
Yeah, the whole thing was a fucking hurdle. Today's been a hurdle. Like every day's been a hurdle. Listen, I don't have a fucking clue what I'm doing. I'm freestyling it as I go along. It took me 2 years to build BOXRAW. I told myself when the idea first came out that I was going to launch in 3 months. 2 years later, I then launched. So, it was very much me having to learn everything about the industry, from how to design products, because I was a one-man band for a year and a half. So 2 years building, and then 1.5 years after we launched, it was still just me. So I was doing everything from the websites, the customer service, the picking and packing, the product designs, the quality control, feedback loops. So I was very much in camp, if you to try and take the boxing connotation, from day one. I was working on I had a car sales business at the same time while I was building BOXRAW, and even 1.5 years into launching BOXRAW, I had a business on the side. So, I'd wake up every morning, 4 a.m. I'd read all the Shopify blogs online to learn more about e-commerce in the industry. Go to the garage in the morning after the gym, and then I'd be reading things in my time, spare time. As soon as I got back, I'd be carrying on going home, working more on the product. Wake up again early in the morning, speak to suppliers, go to the gym, get into the garage, sell cars, and work more on BOXRAW. So I think the whole thing's been like a gradual grind, which is just, the grind's got bigger and bigger and bigger. But I think it was that initial learning curve of figuring out what the hell you do, to try and jump into this industry.
Where does that drive come from? That sort of entrepreneurial sort of passion for things. Do you think that was it something that's like been bred into you? Is it something that you picked up from expressing yourself whilst boxing? Where does that come from? Because you've got to be so mentally ready for something like this, to go through what you go through and to achieve certain things. Where does it come from?
Yeah, I think it comes from an insecurity. I think, if I look at myself as a young age, the reason why I got into boxing was because I was bullied a lot growing up. I got into a lot of gang violence, got into a lot of trouble, and I was done with being the victim. So I got into boxing initially so I could learn how to fight. That was that insecurity. I didn't want to be the guy on the street that couldn't handle himself and be in a situation where, if someone put it on me, I wasn't able to fight back. Because I was a small kid growing up. I'm still a small geezer now. But in my business, it was the same sort of thing. My parents came from India. They were Christian missionaries. We moved to England when I was 6 years old, in an all-white Roman Catholic school. Without trying to tell a sob story, I always felt I was beneath other people. From Christmas presents, we would get £20 out of the Argos catalog, whereas kids were getting, Nintendos and PlayStations. So I always had a bit of a chip on my shoulder. And I remember when I was 12 years old, my mom used to give me 50p emergency bus fare to get the bus when it was raining. And we could only use that in emergency, right? When it was raining. And then before and after school, kids would always go to the newsagents to buy the sweets, crisps, chocolates, and drinks. And I could never do that. And I remember always just feeling a bit beneath everyone because I couldn't afford to do that, And when you're in school, it's always like the coolest kids, the kids that have the nicest trainers. When the parents come and pick them up, they come in a nice car. For me, I was walking back, So I remember using that 50p once to buy sweets and chocolates, and then mum found out we didn't have it at the end of the day. She hit me over the back of the head, said, look, we can't afford that. And then the next day, just instinctively, I went into the store and I bought these sherbet sticks. They used to sell them for 2p.
Yeah, 2p, wow.
Yeah, and I sold them for 10p each in registration. And I remember thinking, shit, this is easy, man. Like, I've got 50p to show my mom, and I've got the profit to now buy the sweets and chocolates. And that idea just materialized over time. And the drive for me as a kid growing up was never about being a businessman or, oh, I'm so motivated, I'm driven. It was just that I wanted to be able to fit in, I wanted to have the nice shoes and trainers. I wanted to be able to go out, to the chicken shop at the weekends after school, go ice skating, do the things that all kids did, from the age of 12 upwards. So that's what drove me. It was always just this fear of not being what everyone else was, And it wasn't until actually, I've gone through various businesses from, as I said, car sales, mechanics, import, export, mobile phone apps. I've tried it all, and it was always, all these businesses were always done with the intent of me just trying to make money so I could try and fit in. And it wasn't until, off the back of the failure of a lot of other businesses, realizing actually I need to start doing what makes me happy, as opposed to, well, both happy and meaningful, as opposed to just what makes me money. Yeah. So it wasn't until I launched BOXRAW that actually I found my passion now. And that all went out the window now. So now I just do this for love of what I'm doing, as opposed to any insecurity that's fueled, on the back end to do with, not being able to fit in or being able to fight and so on.
So from what you've just sort of said and the impression I get about this brand, it's a brand for everybody. You mentioned there about wanting to start things and trying to fit in. You mentioned your school life and stuff like that. I want to read you something that comes with your gifts and your products, which I think sort of signifies what your brand is and why it appeals to everyone and not just a certain amount of people. So it says, BOXRAW was born from a fuck it, let's do this mindset. A belief that our legacy lies in our own hands and only the brave and audacious get their stories told. Now 6 years in and selling over 150 countries globally, the belief still holds true. Believe me when I say we're yet to scratch the surface of changing the world in boxing forever. Whether you're a loyal customer or this is your first time buying from our brand, thank you for being part of our journey. Be it a hoodie, sauna suit, pair of wraps you're putting on, you're one of us. Let's fucking go. Now, to me, that's a real sort of statement of intent. It appeals to the everyday person. What does that sort of statement mean to you? Because you get a lot of businesses that will put a little thank you card in, but you can tell yours is what your company is, raw.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, it's BOXRAW, the whole team here, myself, we're so authentic to ourselves. So we put things out like that, which again, it's just we say it matter of fact because it is matter of fact. We really are trying to change the fucking game within boxing because it's been filled with dinosaurs, man. And when I say dinosaurs, I'm talking about the companies within the sport. And listen, I'm not going to caveat that with, listen, I don't mean to disrespect any of the brands. Like, fuck it, man. Like, they all got lazy. They all got so comfortable with just doing the same shit they were doing. No one tries to innovate, It's like, as an example, our boxing gloves, 6 years into development, we work on these boxing gloves. We've literally taken the glove, stripped it down to the fucking hand and built it from the ground up. There's 7 patent points that are pending on the boxing glove at the moment. Is that there's this genuine desire to try and bring more people into the sport of boxing, right? The vision is to be the reason why the world got into boxing. Right now we very much cater for that sort of compete, the amateur market, the professional market. But I'm really trying to sort of shift that narrative away from boxing being viewed as that sport that only a few can partake in or only the lower class can partake in. Actually, there's so many benefits for people to get from boxing, whether it be them trying to compete, in white collar, amateur, professional, or they just do it for their mental health, or their fitness, or their empowerment, their self-confidence. I just think it's a sport that really has the power to change the world. And, be that, we need to be the company that's leading and sort of pushing the sport forward. And we can do that through doing cool things that make boxing more accessible, creating products that can shout, you can tell the world that you're a boxer without saying you're a boxer, making the sport easier. I suffer from arthritis, and which meant I had to stop boxing competitively. And that was part of the reason why, the glove took so long to develop, because we were trying to fix that problem. And there's many people that box and they can't actually unleash their full power because, the human hand's not designed to throw a punch. The human hand was never designed to throw a punch. So if you hit slightly incorrectly, you can really do damage. And even if you hit correctly, your bones aren't built for that. Yeah, I think it's just we're true to our core and our vision and our mission of really trying to change the game and really trying to bring more people into the sport.
Has there been a particular moment? I think I might know the answer to this just from how you come across. Has there been a particular moment throughout your journey where you sort of, whether it be a landmark moment where you've stopped and gone, you know what, we've arrived here? I know you've had these moments like with Creed and stuff like that, and you've aligned yourself with some big names in boxing. But is there a moment where, I don't want to say you've sat back, but you've just gone, we're here? Do you know what I mean? There's been a point.
I always get asked questions like this, and it's all I don't want to fob out of this, and the reason being is that I've done this with every business I've ever done, right? Albeit it's been a success or it's been a failure. I've done it with the intention of telling myself that it's going to work, right? So regardless of what sales were saying, regardless of what we'd achieved, that vision was always there. I think if I had to hang my hat on one thing where a moment I thought, okay, right, shit's starting to kick off now, I think it would probably be when we first launched the collaboration with Lomachenko. And I was backstage with him. I was his commercial manager at the same time, so I was in charge of all the social media. I was ringside with him afterwards in the locker rooms. There was a great team photo of me with, all the team in the same tracksuits. And I remember that moment just thinking like, fuck, I'm here at Madison Square Garden on the biggest fight of the year. And that was a great moment. That was a great moment. I was like, shit, it's really happening. But past that point, I'm quite I'm not good. You know, anyone that's close to me, you know, they always tell me that, you know, you need to sit back and be like, you know, give yourself a pat on the back. But listen, the vision's much bigger than what we've achieved to date. So, you know, when people ask me that, you know, they're putting their own almost insecurity, their own ambition onto me and say, look, shit, you should look back and look how far you've come. Like, no, motherfucker. Like, I'm going for that, you know, and right now I'm here.
I had a feeling that the answer would have been somewhat on the lines of we don't sit back. Like you just mentioned there, like you have had these big moments, but like you just said there, look, and in your card as well, you've only scratched the surface. Now, let's come on to some fighters. You've aligned yourself with some truly remarkable names. More recently, I mean, I was in Vegas for the fight, Gervonta Davis. Saw a lot of Gervonta Davis BOXRAW collaborations and things together. So, how much of a buzz is it for you as obviously a fight fan boxer when you see your products that you've built, or your extensive team that you've worked for, and you see the likes of Gervonta Davis sat there, and you mentioned Lomachenko, and they're sporting your brand at weigh-ins, fight nights. You must get such a buzz looking and go, you know what, we've achieved something here. Like it must be a buzz.
Yeah, it is. And you know what? That's actually, I'm living the dream. I'm living my dream, right? I'm working with boxers I used to watch on TV, you know, growing up, you know, ones that I'd never even imagined to be, you know, sitting down with, FaceTiming on a, you know, daily basis and doing business with them and, you know, making it a value add from both sides. So it's a big fucking buzz, you know, it's a big fucking buzz. But at the same time, you know, we seldom lessen our laurels, you know, and I'll constantly say this to the team in that we're meant to be doing this, you know, we're not here, and I hate that cliche saying, you know, we're not here to take part, you know, generally we're here to sort of own and monopolize the whole boxing ecosystem, you know, albeit with just apparel, to do with tech, you know, there's so many projects that people don't even know about we're working on, you know, with equipment, footwear, you know, the ambition is not just to be an apparel brand, you know, the ambition is for BOXRAW to become synonymous with the sport of boxing.
Absolutely. Well, look, we sort of touched on it a little bit earlier when we talked about you sort of vision board and creed and things like that. Just describe, and this is a bit of a chance to sort of reflect. Although I know you're forward driven, but for the purpose of the interview, red carpet moment, Creed 3, the partnership you had with that movie, and you know when you look at the movie and you've got the boxers wearing the tracksuits and stuff like that. Just describe what that moment was like when you got the deal over the line and how proud you are to be working with just a force such as that.
Yeah, you know what? For me, the journey is really what excites me. Like whenever we hit the goal, it's usually like put it this way, right? The first time I watched the movie, I think it was, where did I watch it the first time? It was a London premiere. I watched it 6 times. Fucking London premiere, LA premiere, two LA screenings, New York screening, London screening. The very first time I watched it wasn't, I wasn't gassed at all, man. I was watching the whole thing thinking, fucking hell, I wish we had got that moment, or I wish the product had done this job, or because I also know the backstory of, you know, how certain products got in. I know certain products that we didn't make in time because we were fucking so time constrained. But the journey itself, you know, when we first sort of having those meetings and pitching the idea and making the products, working with the team till 5 a.m., coming back in the office for 7 a.m., like those were the moments that really, you know, that really got me going. I was like, yeah, we're fucking building, you know, we're going after this. Like once I've done it, I'm like, yo, what's next?
I think that's sort of a key part of any sort of successful business. Like you mentioned there, resting on your laurels. Like this is what we're meant to be doing. Although for that moment in time, and a lot of people say, you know, we have moments in time where you see your logo on either a fighter and you see a project that's just for that moment. But then what's next? What we're doing next? So that brings me on to sort of a penultimate, really. If you can share any goals, what are the sort of main goals within the next 5 to 10 years that you, BOXRAW, you want to say, look, we've done that, we've been a part of that? What are the ones you want to tick off?
5 to 10 years. I mean, you know, there's some stuff I definitely can't talk about to do with the technology part of the business.
Okay, yeah.
You know, in short, we're using technology. We've created a system which uses skeletal positional data to track the. Sorry, we've created a system, an AI system, which tracks skeletal positional data for boxers and uses that to inform insights and analytics for coaches, boxers, broadcasters for TV analytics, and even down to the point of gambling. You know, so that's fucking cool. We've been working on that for about 2 years now. No one has a fucking clue what we're doing with it, but that's going to change the entire industry and change the entire language of boxing, for the better. You know, we've got obviously the boots which needs to launch. We've got the gloves, the head guards, the groin guards. We've got some real cool innovations launching around a system which is going to mitigate the need for a hand wrap. Everything's very much innovation focused. You know, I want to get a boxing gym in every single third world country through our charity, Boxing is Love. We were setting up a lot more projects across the UK, some in Europe, and then the USA for in disadvantaged areas with programs with schools and local boxing gyms. Yeah, I'm trying to. I think the next 5 to 10 years, it's hard to. I've got certain goals. What I do know is that things don't always work to plan, you know. So for me, there's not so much of a timeline when I do this. Like, listen, I'm doing this till I die. You know, I can't think of anything else I prefer to be doing than this. I'm trying to create a legacy brand, you know, it's here from 100 years from now, you know, and create that ecosystem around the sport of boxing. So it's very much everything developing around that ecosystem, you know. And of course, you know, keep creating sick gear, collaborating with the biggest names in the industry, both past, you know, and present. And we got some real cool collaborations happening, actually. Real cool collaborations.
Well, I just want to touch on one thing there. You mentioned the charity and putting gyms in places where it's underprivileged. Obviously, you work with Gervonta Davis and doesn't come as much sort of underprivileged as him and his backstory when you see what he's gone through. Is that a thing that's close to your heart, to give back in a way where we can maybe see boxing help kids and get them off streets and get them into something? Because I look in this country as well, and when we see the amount of crime and things like that, I think loads of promoters have touched on it, but the government, I think, with the introduction of boxing, whether you want to take it professional or not, I think we could solve quite a lot of things with it.
Oh, 100%. I mean, listen, I go back to the vision, right? The vision is to be the reason why the world got into boxing. It would be incredibly disingenuous of me to say that I want to be the reason why the world got into boxing, but then I'm going to disregard a third of the world's population who don't have access to the sport, or they don't have the money to be able to buy our gear, right? I can't bring people into the sport if they can't buy our gear. Like, I need to be able to take boxing to areas of the world where otherwise they wouldn't have access to it, right? So it first stems from that. And then linking back to my own past, like, I was a little shit growing up, you know. Yes, I got bullied a lot, but I gave it just as much as I got, you know. And I saw what it did for me and other kids from the streets, you know, and how it turned their lives around. Some of them gone into boxing as a career. Some of them actually, just like me, it instilled in them the values of discipline, you know, the core tenets of mindfulness, love, and, you know, these things which are so intrinsically related to boxing, but then taking that into the actual real life world, right? The intention with Boxing is Love is not to make every single kid that we come in contact with try and make him, you know, him or her a world champion. It's not. It's that actually, if we can instill in them these core principles, which typically kids don't get access to, which is around discipline and mindfulness and love and community, then actually the world would be a better place, right? It's like the majority of problems that happen in the streets, especially with kids growing up, is just anger issues, you know, firsthand. You know, you'll know this if you've boxed and anyone's listening, is that boxing doesn't make you angry, you know. It teaches you to handle situations very differently. Now, listen, there are always going to be anomalies of people that box and they also get into trouble. You know, it's always going to be the case. By and large, the majority, it will put them on the right path. And that's the ambition of Boxing is Love. Brilliant.
Well, look, Ben, you've given me a real insight into sort of this journey. We look forward to seeing it evolve. Me especially, like I said, I've been aware of your brand for a long time now, and it's interesting to see the journey and where it's going. And look, we'll stay in touch, and hopefully we can meet up and do something in person one time. But I appreciate you giving me some of your time, Ben. I really do.
All right, man. Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it.